Welcome to the next ReGen Ag Chat. My name's Liz Jennifer.
And I'm Nick Renison.
So this is exciting. We've got a series of 3 podcasts. So Nick and I have chatted to various people, and the focus really is food, health, and a bit on sort of how do we get the impact of ReGen food systems slightly wider. So you'll hear from David Unwin, Sally Bell, and Dominique
Fern.
Thank you. That's not professional. Anyway, moving quickly along. So Nick, what have you been up to?
Oh, what have I been up to? It's been a blur. It's been quite busy, which I know is a word you're trying to avoid, Liz, but we have, because of TB, we are carving a lot less this year. So we're kind of working on, I've had to get farm assured because we weren't farm assured. So I had to rekindle my farm assurance again, jump through those hoops. We're sorting out cows to sell, cows to keep. It's quite stressful, but we have had a clear TB test, and we are going to have another one in December, then another one in February, and then, fingers crossed, it might be sorted. Building work for the new barn, our meeting room, partly FIPL-funded barn, is well underway. The only trouble is the scaffolding completely blocks the yard. So that is resulting in a lot of stress, a lot of cursing. The other thing is this year we had our interns, partly woofers, partly paid interns, and they just worked really well. So I'm just on the lookout for people for next season. I think I've found someone to do the veg garden, to get the veg garden sorted early on. But that worked really well. And it was just nice. They were all really good. It was nice having fresh people here. And I think that's why I'm knackered now, because I'm packing eggs and no one's here to help me pack eggs. But no.
Basically, you're after some minions, slaves, however you wish to call them.
And we pay them. And this is my last bit, this is the first year where we're not actually going to plant any trees. So normally, this time of year, we're gearing up for a big tree planting session, but this time we're not. But Liz, what about you?
As ever, I've done lots of farmer meetings. Focus at the minute on cover crops. So this sort of time of year is getting people thinking about how to graze them. Can we graze certain ones? I've also done, I was involved in a really interesting panel down in London. So that was good. So I was the sort of farmer rep on a panel looking at so there was someone there from Unilever, and then sort of a investor, and then a chef, sort of understanding how ReGen all fits together. So that was good. We're at home farm, we're trying to get some capital works done this winter and SFI options and all that sorted. So I will be planting hedges this year. So that's what I'm up to. And then just started a new podcast with my friend, our ex-colleague, Neris Wright. So she's been at HDB for 6 months.
Do I feel jealous?
Unless you want to talk intensely about sheep production, probably not.
No, I'm quite happy for you to have another lover then, another partner. It's quite an open relationship.
Yeah, let's maintain the openness of the relationship. If you wish to, you can find your own podcast relationship, another one. You'll be fine. And then, we're also jumping back to Calm Calling. We're planning some winter meetings, aren't we? Likely to be Jan-Feb time. So we're just arranging them, a continuation of the farming forward events we did last year. And other news, my mother turns 80 this weekend.
Wow.
So that's exciting.
Are you having a party?
Not yet. My dad turns 80 in February, so they're going to have a joint party next year when the weather's a bit better.
Oh, that's nice.
So
that's good.
But Dad is currently panicking about the budget. So we're
recording this the day after the budget, which has, if you go on Twitter, it's the end of the world. I don't think it is the end of the world, but it's quite interesting watching other different people's perspectives on it. I haven't got the brains to think about. We're having a meeting, we always have a meeting with our accountant in a month or two, so we'll sort stuff out there. But I think you've got to speak to people who know about stuff properly rather than watching or listening to Twitter.
Yeah, and I think it's still early days, isn't it, for like the accountants and to get their heads around what it means. And I think it's interesting because you can read it as a way of people passing on businesses earlier. So rather than waiting for sort of the impact of inheritance tax, but I think it's also potentially going to mean splitting up a farm. So yeah, none of this we don't really know what it means yet. We're only day one, aren't we? So it'll be interesting what it means. Dad, we were going to buy or put an offer in on a block of land, and now he's refusing to. So that's how he's dealing with it.
But the money for DEFRA or RP, whichever one it is, that went up significantly, didn't it? Or they've continued it. Maybe that's all quite positive.
Yes, I think for another year it's been the sort of environment SFI type money is there for another year. So, which is sort of on a. We knew it wasn't going to be here forever, but yeah, it's given a little bit of confidence.
But on to more positive notes, Liz. We had a really good chat with Dr. David Unwin, who is a doctor in Southport last week.
You saw at Groundswell, that's how we got him.
Yeah,
and you know his son.
Yeah, his son is a butcher. I don't know if we gave his son a plug actually in the recording, but his son is a butcher in Kendal, and his shop is called Mutton. Oh, dear.
Roast mutton.
Roast mutton.
This is why we need both of us, because we're.
But yeah, so roast mutton. Rob Unwin's shop in Kendal. I think he's about to open another one somewhere, and as a family, they're just following David getting and he talks about it in the recording, but a life-changing moment with a patient who kind of gave him a bit of a kick up the bum, really, to look at things slightly differently. And from 2012 onwards, he's been on a mission regarding diabetes and eating healthier. And he's on Twitter, he's a low-carb doctor. But it was just a really good chat, and there's so many links with farming and the medical profession, which sounds a bit crazy, but how farmers think, how doctors think, and really enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah, and I think that, and he again highlighted that the nutrient density piece, isn't it, in terms of how food has changed over time. So again, then the importance of that, knowing where food comes from, and sort of engaging with sort of farmers who are more interested in increasing that nutrient density. Not that we can measure it very easily at the moment, but
it'll come.
Yep. And he did challenge our love of a biscuit. That's the challenge I have failed to achieve.
Or mine's bread. So I don't know how. I have eaten, since we've spoken to him, I've eaten less bread, and I've also made his pudding of double cream and frozen raspberries, and it is really good. So
it doesn't sound terrible as the two ingredients sound quite nice.
I know, but it kind of think, oh, you need some sugar in there, and I didn't put sugar in there. But if I had put sugar in there, it would have I would have wolfed it down a bit quicker. But he just talks a lot of sense. So it's kind of realizing we've got to look after our own health, but as farmers, we really need to work hard to be producing amazing food to keep the nation healthy.
I think, there's up to 200 people, aren't there, in his practice that are now in remissions from type 2 diabetes purely from following his diet. So he's it's big impacts for them, plus the costs associated with their treatment and potential future health issues. So, yeah,
I think it's 141 though, Liz.
I thought it was 180 something.
I think it's 141.
Round
still a lot.
Anyway, best thing to do is listen to him, not us two. That's the key in all of this.
On that note, I was going to say at this point, if you listen to this podcast and thinking, my God, what are these two on? Don't do this. But if you're listening to it and thinking, oh, this is quite relaxing, chitter chatter, quite enjoying this, and then I'm going to go on and enjoy David's chat, please give us a 5-star review and follow us because it helps. This is what they say on The Rest is Politics. It helps people find us. It helps people know we're here. Yeah. Anyway, over to David. So today, Liz and I are joined by David Unwin, a GP from Southport, well, near Southport and near Liverpool. He's known on Twitter as the low carb doctor, and he's got lots of interest, obviously, health, diabetes, keeping people on the right track health-wise, but also biodiversity, and increasingly an interest in farming. His son is a butcher in Kendal, who I know. And this year, I saw David speak at Groundswell, and it was a session that linked ReGen Ag to ReGen Meds. So, David, thank you very much for giving us your time today. First question, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm an old GP, and I've looked after my population for 40 years. So I've looked after the same population for 40 years. So I've got, I think, 3 different bits to my life that will interest your viewers. So I'm a GP with a passion for trying to get my patients healthy without using drugs. And I've come to the realization that nutrition is absolutely key to a surprising number of illnesses. So that's one thread, is helping my patients find optimal health using nutrition and not drugs. Another aspect to my life, I have a passion for wildlife and the countryside. Since the age of 13, I've helped the Three Owls Bird Sanctuary. I've outlived everybody there, so I'm now end up, just because I'm called as the senior trustee of the Three Owls Bird Sanctuary, and I personally manage 40 acres of bird reserve, some of which I do as regenerative agriculture using grazing animals. So that's another aspect of my life. And then the third one is I live on a small holding. Used to be a big farm, but we're a small holding. And we've produced probably the majority of the meat for the family with the few fields of land that I've got around. And I also am fascinated with how you bring children up in that way and how they adapt to looking after animals that eventually you eat. So all my 3 children grew up knowing that, and now I've got 7 grandchildren who we're doing the same thing, helping bring them up on a farm and give them what I think is quite a strong, healthy background. So you've got those 3 things, but we probably ought to start with the medicine, I think, Nick. What aspect do you want to go over?
Well, when I was researching for this podcast, I listened to you speaking quite a few years ago, and you did have a light bulb moment, didn't you? We love a light bulb moment on this podcast.
Okay,
and that was in 2012.
Well done. Yeah, you were concentrating. Yes, so I think obviously I'm now an old doctor. I'm 66, but when I was 50, around 55, something like that, I was senior partner of the practice where I still work. And there was a patient, somebody with diabetes, and she was being very naughty because she wasn't taking her drugs. And in part, the practice was paid along the lines of, are your patients taking drugs? And I knew she wasn't. because we can tell whether people cash in their prescriptions. And she wasn't. So I wrote her a letter to say I was worried about her because I knew she wasn't taking her medication. And please, will you make an appointment with Dr. Unwin? I need to discuss this with you. Of course, the subtext was I was going to tell her off and say, come on, you need to take your medication. That is a kind of routine chat with doctors and patients, isn't it? Come on now, do your duty, take your tablets. Anyway, she walks in and I'm in for a shock because, I'm in for several shocks. The first shock was that I didn't recognize her. She had lost so much weight and she dressed quite differently. She lost stones in weight and she looked fabulous. She was wearing a fitted suit, sort of tweedy fitted suit, which she couldn't have worn before. So I didn't even recognize her. But the bigger shock was she was hopping mad with me. And older doctors learn to be frightened of cross patients because you don't want to complain, because it takes years, to sort out a real difficult complaint. And she was on the runway, this woman. She said, right, so I've got diabetes and you're going to tell me off for not taking my medication, but you're in for a surprise because my blood sugar is normal. I've been checking it. I don't need your drugs anymore. And the reason I don't need your drugs anymore is because I have worked out that bread is sugar, breakfast cereals are sugar, biscuits are sugar, and rice is sugar. I've worked this out for myself. I don't eat these things now, and I don't need your medication. And she said, actually, this is schoolboy biology, that starchy carbohydrates are sugar. And you never in 10 years shared that with me. And yet, as somebody with type 2 diabetes, sugar is a problem for me. And then comes the killer line. She said, I'm actually wondering if you're qualified as a doctor. Really scary. But of course, the most frightening point about this was she was correct. I was ashamed because every one of those was an arrow that found its mark. I never had. We discussed sugar slightly, and I'd taken her blood pressure and so on. And when I checked up on this afterwards, she was one of 40,000 people online in a low-carb forum teaching each other how to look after type 2 diabetes with your diet. And these people were being rubbished by healthcare professionals for the sincere efforts they made to improve their health. And suddenly I understood I was thinking nutrition. What's going on? How is it that I've never bothered? And a lot of doctors are not bothering. So this opened up a whole new world for me.
And sorry, why hadn't you bothered?
Well, it's a good question, because I did learn about starch being sugar. I have got O-level biology, and I did learn about that. So I think gradually I'd started to think that medicine was largely about drugs and prescribing. I mean, and really, let's cut to thing straight away, because I meet a lot of farmers who, farming apparently seems to be about largely spraying and killing stuff. And I think it's a bit the same. We've sort of drifted half asleep into somehow the answer to everything is a chemical of one type or another. And I saw diabetes as a chronic deteriorating condition. I'd use one drug and then you would deteriorate, and I'd do another one, and then we'd add a third one, and then something for your blood pressure and something for your lipids. So to meet somebody who'd radically improved their health without my drugs was a wake-up call. And of course, I suppose fast forward now, that same approach that lady started, my clinic in Southport, north of Liverpool, we've got the best data on improving diabetes for any clinic in the world, and we publish this data. So we've now got I think it's 146 people who've put their diabetes into drug-free remission. So this thing that I had never seen, drug-free remission of diabetes, that lady was number one. And we're now at 146 and counting. And it's just opened my mind to the world of possibilities to do with nutrition. And we've done a BBC One documentary that went out to 4 million people. My work's been covered by The New Scientist. We've published 20 peer-reviewed papers now. So it's completely changed my life and my understanding of medicine. Is that enough?
Yeah, no, that's great. Amazing.
Because my sort of biased understanding is that the sort of link between pharmaceutical companies and sort of, well, there's basically an encouragement of high levels of drug usage. Is that just, I've basically read too much Daily Mail?
No, you haven't. How did I get into this? Well, there is this idea, I think the drug reps used to come, and there's this idea that modern doctors know the latest drugs. So they bring the suitcases with all the little samples in and give you a free pen. And modern doctors are prescribing this, and modern doctors. And so you feel a bit like you should keep up and use, and let's be fair, there are times when drugs are lifesavers, and I do prescribe drugs. But this is so much like regenerative agriculture when I tell you that our practice has saved £372,000 on the diabetes drug budget alone. So it's a bit like when you hear farmers that say when they're not using sprays and imports, they're saving money. Well, we've saved that much, £372,000 just on drugs for diabetes, because the drugs are thousands and thousands of pounds a year. It's a very big bill for the National Health Service. And in fact,
No, but you mentioned your funding came from having people who were using drugs. So I suppose you claimed the funding for the drug, and to continue that funding, that person had to continue the drug rather than it almost seems like you're being incentivized to use drugs. So you get more funding.
That would be fair. We are incentivized to be modern and that we should be prescribing medication that the authorities feel is beneficial for patients. But what isn't sufficiently incentivized is the idea of before you start lifelong medication, we should give people a chance to prove what they can do with diet. And that's what I do now. So if you say, Liz, if I said to you, right, you've got diabetes, do you want to start lifelong drugs today that you'll take for the rest of your life and that may have side effects? Or are you interested in working with me to see if we can improve your diet, improve your health, and you'd never need the drugs? It's a no-brainer. And that's what I never did this with patients before. I never gave them the chance. I just presumed. This is so embarrassing. I wasn't thinking. I just presumed that patients weren't that interested in actually changing their diet. And people always say to me, well, how on earth do you get your patients to give up bread? Well, they will if they understand the difference that could make to their health. And now I give every single patient a chance. And I go around the world. So I'm a Royal College of General Practitioners clinical expert now in diabetes. I go around the world educating doctors about the potential of human beings, not as patients, but as intelligent people who might prefer to avoid drugs.
But if we think of how our diet has changed, even from the 80s, well, 80s, 90s even, what is the curve of the diabetes increase? Because that all links to agriculture and our food system.
So in 1986, I was a young man, and that's when I went into partnership at Norwood Avenue. And funnily enough, in the first month I came into partnership, I did an audit of all of our thousands of patients and how many people have type 2 diabetes. And the answer was 57. It's now 630. So you see, in one generation, we have a 10-fold increase in the prevalence of diabetes. This is not genetic. This is a pandemic, and everywhere I go around the world, and diabetes kills you, by the way. So it's really serious, and there should be placards in the streets. Diabetes was rare and was really a thing to do with older people. And now the youngest person with diabetes I've got is 23 years old. What is the future? I'm hopping mad about people being ill unnecessarily. There's so much suffering in the world. And I years of medicine, years of seeing suffering, I'm really allergic to unnecessary suffering. And we are eating our way into this disaster. And it's people are eating differently. It's junk food. I'm quite clear about this. It's junk food. And of course, this helps explain my passion for better quality food. And what does that mean? And who produces it? And that's where we need farmers. We need people with the skills to produce nutrient-dense, quality food with an eye to biodiversity and the birds and the soil and so on. And groundswell. I was blown away by. There were 5,000 farmers there, and it gave me such hope that this number of farmers, and young ones too, the future of farming, were really thinking seriously about chemical inputs into the land and how we can do it better, in the same way that I am thinking about medicine. Very similar things are going wrong in medicine as are going wrong, in my opinion, in farming and land management.
But is there any? Have you got any hope? Is the NHS starting to listen to people like you, or because there's just on the news on Sunday, it was all about Wes Streeting, isn't it? It was talking about drugs for weight loss.
Yeah, I have met Wes Streeting, so I've already met him. Yes, I do have hope. I think there's hope that I have 100,000 followers on Twitter. Intelligent people wanting to learn. There's hope that 4 million people saw our program on the truth about carbs. A lot of my work's been translated into 35 languages. So intelligent people all over the world are they're wondering about health, wondering about improving their health. But this is it's a grassroots revolution, as perhaps regenerative agriculture is, where individuals are thinking, where can I find out more? We've written 7 recipe books, 3 of which have been bestsellers. The Caldese, if anybody wants one, the Caldese recipe books on low carb and diabetes. So there's massive interest. Out of Poland, and there was an audience of 1,400 people wanting to hear me speak on diet and health. So that there is, in one hand, danger, and the idea of just put drugs in the water supply makes me mad. And then on the other, there is hope. And it depends which day you get me on. Probably it's the same in agriculture. You can have a very depressed day about the incentives, about the countryside. And then you can have an amazing day. I was with a farmer on Sunday afternoon in Ireland. He transformed his farm he'd started milking his cows once a day instead of twice a day. Although the yield was down, the quality of the milk was up. The cows lived twice as long because he's not milking them to death. Also, his life was better because he's only milking once a day. So I see little bits of hope all over the place. On a good day and on a bad day, I see the inevitable use of chemicals in medicine and in farming. And that's why I'm so happy to chat to you two and anybody that can be bothered to listen to us.
Can I just
go back? I'm really also interested in, because the perception is that people are choosing processed diets because of a cost decision. Sometimes it's skills or accessibility or all of those things. So was there, or has there, from your work, also now gone sort of community food projects or people growing food at sort of not allotment scale, but sort of that sort of, rather than doing, it's not pushing all the responsibility onto farmers, is it? It's also taking to take responsibility as well.
Not at all. Now, the first thing is about so my patients are not wealthy people. I'm not of Liverpool. They will tell you that if you're honest about your food budget before and after, that you can eat quality food and it doesn't cost more. And they say the vital bit of honesty is to admit the money you're wasting on crisps, chocolate bars, fizzy drinks, those kind of things. And they say if you add up every pound can that you drink, if you compare that to actually buying ingredients, it works out at approximately the same, because we're wasting, every time you buy petrol, you pick up a bar. That isn't food. It's not food. And so that's the first thing I'd say. What we've done, so we've been running group consultations, that is 20 or 30 people all together in the doctor's waiting room on a Wednesday. We've got one tomorrow evening, and we do very quick cookery demonstrations, stuff that, can you make it in 5 minutes? Making soup. If you blend frozen raspberries with double cream, you can make instant ice cream, these kind of things. So, and frozen raspberries don't have to cost more. Eggs are not expensive. So do you know how to make an omelette? So I would say, first is the cost of junk food, the danger of junk food. It can be addictive. So my wife's expertise, she's a clinical psychologist, and she's doing the first research in the world on how you help people give up junk food, because people are addicted to this stuff. It rewires your brain. Increasingly, government are beginning to understand the dangers of junk food. And my skill, perhaps, is linking in with mothers, linking in with families. And I think feeding your family, no matter whether you're very poor or you're very rich, there are ways to do it, that you can buy quality ingredients. Green veg is not expensive. Mince isn't expensive. Eggs are not expensive, and double cream isn't expensive. And you can create a diet for your family. And so I've got 7 children, 3 children, my sister and all her children. All of us have given up junk food completely. All of us will. You won't catch any of us opening a little crinkly packet of biscuits. We just won't do it because we've all seen the improvement. And if in every clinic I do, in every single clinic I do, I'm seeing healthy animals, healthy people saying, I can't believe the difference it's made to how I sleep, to the energy I've got, to my skin. And this is the power. This is the power of nutrition, the power of eating nutrient-dense food and leaving out the junk. And of course, when I look at farmers, now it was interesting very interesting at Groundswell. Most of those farmers looked healthy. I was surprised. But, if I go to other farming things, plainly, a lot of those people will have diabetes and high blood pressure. I can just look at them to see that will be the case. And it makes me sad, because farmers are, you're half of the way there. A lot of farmers have a good understanding, at least of animal nutrition. And it's not so far to go from that to working out something about human nutrition. And that's what I'm just thinking, what can we do to help farmers be proud of what they produce? What can we do to make them or help them understand how they could help their own health and have more energy and maybe even better mental health? I've seen very often with patients. It's a very exciting new world. I mean, There are conferences all over the world where we're talking about nutrition and the difference it can make to health. That was a bit of a long answer, but it is.
It's just, and it's interesting because I'm judging my own diet because I nobly endeavour, but occasionally I do have a chocolate bar when I go and do some petrol. So it's the zero tolerance, the bit I can't quite get to, and it's also that sort of. I then was thinking about lambing time. Could we get through lambing time without a box of celebrations? But that's more dealing with tiredness and all of that. So.
Well, do you know, it isn't tiredness, Liz. So let me tell you about myself.
I know it's addiction. Celebrations, it's addiction.
Yeah, right. So when I was 55, I'd eaten my way into having type 2 diabetes with biscuits. And I had, I was responsible for 10,000 patients. People die. They're cross with their doctor. And I coped by eating biscuits in the drawer because I was really stressed. Very stressed. I did my own call at night and that kind of thing. And my wife used to find me eating biscuits. I remember one time there was a guy supposedly semi-conscious, and I couldn't face I was stressed. And she caught me eating biscuits in the kitchen. And she said, get out there and get out there now. How dare you? What are you doing eating biscuits? I was so stressed. And I was using junk food as a crutch. I hadn't understood until I had a big belly, was sleepy, and I had diabetes. And you shouldn't use crutches. Alcohol is another one. And I hadn't understood. And I think the beginning is understanding what's going on with nutrition. Because when you understand it better, you start making better decisions. And I'd thought age 55, no wonder I'm a bit snoozy. No wonder I'm a bit grumpy and tired. I hadn't understood that a lot of that was due to my diet. And within a month of really cleaning my diet up, I needed an hour's less sleep a day. I stopped being moany, my wife said. She said, you used to be very fretty. You used to go on about stuff for days. And some of that was diet. And here I am. So I've never dreamt I would work as I'm working now. And I can run. I'm 66. I've been racing my 35-year-old daughter this morning. She cannot outrace me. And I'm 66.
How annoying.
That is a bloody brilliant thing. I couldn't even run when I was younger. As a younger man, I couldn't run. And in a sprint now, I can beat my daughter. None of my grandchildren can run as fast as I can. Diet is key to my mental health and my physical health. And I think farmers, what you need to be is healthy and strong to cope, not weaker because of the junk food that you've been conned into consuming.
This question is going to sound like the Sunday Telegraph magazine. What is explain or talk us through your day, like
That's
diet?
exactly what I was going to say.
Right.
From the very moment you wake up, like tea, coffee, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my addiction that I allow is a black coffee. So my wife, Jen, brings me a black coffee to bed, and I start the day with one of those. I haven't actually eaten breakfast for about 8 years because I don't need it. Because you see, so here's the thing. We are a dual fuel engine. And so you can run on either fat or carbohydrate. I run on fat. So I've this morning on a black coffee been a 4-mile run before this. I haven't eaten anything and I shan't eat until 1 o'clock. But at 1 o'clock, I can tell you what's coming. Some really delicious lamb chops with butter and green beans. It'd be a big pile of them. That'd be lunch. After lunch, I might have cream with my coffee and a square of dark chocolate, possibly. Tea time, it depends what's going on. Oh, actually, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to Nando's with the grandchildren, but I will only eat today. I will only have the chicken and coleslaw. I'll eat loads of chicken, coleslaw and olives. And then when we get back with the grandchildren, I'll do Papa's pudding which is the raspberries and double cream I told you about, with a decaf coffee. And that'll be today's food, like something like that.
There's the other bit that's interesting, isn't it? Which is the sheer volume of food you have to buy shrinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Two-thirds of the supermarkets are totally redundant to me now, because I'm only looking for ingredients. So I'm looking at the green veg. I need to buy frozen stuff and fish as well, eggs. But then again, I've got loads of hens. So I'll get the hens. I've been and got the eggs off the hens today. So that's kind of it. A butcher shop's very important to me, and the quality of what I eat. So I can really, my taste buds have changed greatly. I can taste the sugar in milk. Milk is a very sweet drink to me now. It's got sugar in it. But when you're eating all the junk, your taste buds are corrupted. So for me now, I can really tell the quality of meat that I'm eating. I'm a very discerning consumer, because the fat, I can particularly tell from the fat, things like how was the animal kept, or what, I find fat really interesting. So life is simpler because I only eat twice a day and I get to lie in bed a little bit longer, and it saves on the washing up as well. And it's all just simpler. And all of my family live like that. All of my family.
So David, say if you were a single parent at your practice, and you didn't have hardly any cash, you probably got quite a stressful life.
Yes.
And they're used to having breakfast, say it's cereal and toast, probably doesn't cost a huge amount. What's your starting point with them? Because I don't think they could probably afford lamb chops and Nando's.
No. It's quite different, right? It's a really important thing about children is they're, in my opinion, not getting enough protein. They're having sugar with their sugar all day. So the first thing for a mother is, in your stock, you really care about growth. Well, surely in your kids, it's the same. And you wouldn't feed your stock on sugar with the sugar unless you were wanting to fatten pigs at the end, maybe. So that's the first thing you want those children, and growth in part is about protein. So the first thing is for mothers to understand that breakfast cereals, biscuits, even orange juice is all sugar. And then they have a bun when they get to school. And then it's pizza and chips and rice. That kid has had no protein. So how about eggs? And how might you do that? So how about scrambled eggs? What's wrong? If you've got two kids, why don't you do a dirty, great big cheese omelette and cut it in half for the kids for breakfast, and maybe serve it with baked beans? That's quick. How long does that take? Is it expensive? No, it isn't. And so eggs are a staple. And thinking about protein, so that might be cheese. Might be eggs. It might be mince, and I wouldn't be frightened of fatty mince at all. Some of it, you see, we've been doing this now in the practice for 12 years. So the patients are becoming very sophisticated down the line with like a boiled chicken. Well, some of them are making soup with that, and they're saying it doesn't cost much. People are intelligent and they are capable of doing, if they believe in, they will prioritize different things. And I did a thing for the Daily Mail on eating to a budget. And there's a wonderful app based on my work called the Freshwell app, which you can download on your phone. And that's guiding mothers as to how you can feed your family with I think it's about £1.50 per portion of an actual low carb diet to feed a family on a budget. My daughter can do it. Now, my daughter's on benefit. My daughter's on benefit and has 4 children on benefits, and she's feeding her family in this way. So it is I'm not saying it's easy, but if it was a priority, then it's possible. And go.
Sorry. And in this country, are we is the UK particularly sick in comparison to, say, other countries in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, there's a hierarchy. In Europe, we're the winners. We are the sick men of Europe. Our children are the fattest. I think we are the worst in Europe. And the only good news is we're not yet as bad as America, but of course we're rushing to catch up with America. And when you go to America, just look at the portion size, look at the junk that people are eating, and it's heartbreaking. And a statistic for you, 38% of everybody in the UK has fatty liver. Fatty liver is the same as foie gras. Foie gras, how do you get foie gras out of geese? A funnel and carbohydrate. We're doing that with our children. And fatty liver is linked to all-cause mortality and diabetes and high blood pressure. It's really serious. And so health is really, as a farmer, what have you got if you're not healthy? Well, you're bankrupt before long. Our health, we need to cost in. Liz, you were talking about the cost. Well, you cost in being ill into your life. If you're ill, you're not lambing. It's really, we seem to be blundering around when we haven't noticed just how poorly people are. And the health of the nation has changed in my career. Children are fatter. They're much fatter. When I went to school, in the whole school, there was one fat kid, only one. So much so, his name was Cameron. I hope he's not listening to this recording. But there was only one fat child in the entire school. Well, you stand out at any school now, and you'll see about a quarter of the children have a tummy that they shouldn't have. What are we doing? We are sleepwalking. And I'm trying to get the world to wake up in a as loving a way as I can, because I don't want parents to feel guilty, but nutrition is key. As farmers, nutrition is key for your stock. And you presumably realize that better quality inputs lead to better quality. Your pasture, the quality of the pasture is key to the stock. You're always thinking about your grass and a knowledge of where you're up to with magnesium and this, that, and the other. Well, it's just the same with human beings. And we had the skills. Our grandparents fed us in a way where diabetes was rare. So the nation is forgetting. And then we come to the food supply. It's deteriorating. So here's a shocking statistic for you. If you compare cabbage or kale or cauliflower or whatever green veg you want, in terms of nutrient density now compared to the year 1900, green veg has lost 80% of the iron, magnesium, and various other vital things in it. So the nutrient density of food is dropping. It's becoming harder. I find that research into the nutrient density of green veg astonishing but fascinating. And it's becoming complicated to get enough nourishment. And then we have the massive industry of supplements and so on coming from that. But if possible, let's think about the food supply.
And that linking between soil health, isn't it? So quite a lot of those is linking towards actually we're growing them in depleted soils. We're then also spraying chemicals. We've also changed variety types so they deal better with being harvested and storage. So there's a combination of factors. It's not just health, but...
Oh, absolutely. So you've got shallow rooting grass. You've got the use of fertilizers. You've got, I have a friend who is a specialty tomato grower, and there's something like treble the sugar in tomatoes now. He's bred them to be like sweets, so you're all popping them all the time like grapes. So that there's a whole storm of problems leading to a lack, or nobody's thinking about nutrient density. And we need to. We really need to. And of course, the research will be very hard to do. Go.
No, I've just got some quick fire questions because I think I know the answer. Can I eat oats? In your world, no. But I love oats.
Well, it would depend. Yes, you can. But it would depend how many oats you eat. It would depend on, do you have diabetes? So I can't eat oats because, of course, they're starch and it just breaks down into a load of sugar. But if you personally don't have diabetes, you could. But I would, with the oats, has to come eggs for nutrient density, has to come, probably I'd go for liver. I mean, liver, even if it was liver pate, is so nutrient dense. It's amazing stuff. If you compare the nutrient density of an apple with liver wins in just the superfood, and it's not expensive. So Liz, it would depend. You can have oats, but I mean, if you just had porridge every morning, you haven't really had any protein. And also oats will make you hungry because you see carbohydrate drives appetite, because carbohydrate puts up your blood sugar. You put up your blood sugar and insulin, the hormone insulin, comes in and as an imperative has to get rid of that sugar. And it turns it into fat. So then you end up fat and hungry, which is why if I had porridge for breakfast, I'm ready for that chocolate bar, which I mean, that I used to have muesli and I used to add a banana and raisins to make it healthier. But by mid-morning, I'm ready for those biscuits because carbohydrate drives appetite. So if you compared, let's say, a cheese omelette to your porridge, you'd score in terms of nutrient density and you'd stand a chance of not being hungry later. So this is very individual between all of us to try and experiment and see what do you feel better on. Next question.
I was because I was on the Zoe app for a bit just because it was quite an interesting thing. I then stopped doing it because I was really bored of being shamed for eating red meat,
which was wicked, and they're wrong on that. And if we had longer, I have all the papers. This idea that red meat shortens life and mortality, there is plenty of evidence that is nonsense. And this shaming about red meat, which is nutrient-dense food, makes me cross. And I feel it's wrong because, you're producing a nutrient-dense product for which I could do you, and I'm going to do hopefully a groundswell. I'm going to show you the studies. What we've done, we've lumped together processed red meat with red meat, and then you say, oh, it gives diabetes and all the rest of it. They lump it together, but processed red meat was it the burger or was it the bun? You don't eat. People have a burger and then they have chips and they probably have a milkshake. And there is plenty of research that shows that red meat can be healthy and can lead people with a higher intake of red meat have actually less all-cause mortality. We'd have to probably do a separate thing on that and let me show you the studies because I've spent years. How am I so confused? So my patients are having more, and this has gone on for years, bear in mind. So my patients are eating a lot more meat, a lot more butter, a lot more double cream and full fat milk. And every measure of cardiovascular risk improved. And I published it in BMJ Nutrition because I couldn't believe the improvements in all of the metrics for cardiovascular risk on people eating in this way. So and incidentally, that paper is now the most popular paper that BMJ Nutrition has ever published because the appetite in the world for finding the details of this out is very great. So there's something odd going on about nutrition. There's something odd about some of the research, but there's other research shows that meat is not harmful.
But it's non-processed. So you're basically eating steaks or your lamb chops, or
You're using ingredients. But you can, I mean, last night my kids, we just got mince, made patties and fried them because we're a bit tired. So that was a beef burger. With just mince. So how long does that take? But it's not junk food because it's an ingredient. So yes, but it's the processed food. Although, you know, I don't know. I would have bacon and not worry about it. I would eat bacon and really not worry. But yeah, red meat's fine.
I remember reading something about like people would. It was a few years ago when they were using the analogy of sausages and bacon and sort of relating it back to cigarettes. And it was like inferring that if you ate one sausage, it's like the equivalent of smoking a cigarette in terms of health risk.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Now, it depends. I would say, now, sausages is a good question. Let's debate sausages. So my son is a butcher and he makes sausages and it's very nearly 100% meat. He's not adding bread. He's, you know, his sausages are made of meat, end of. Now, a lot of sausages, they add so much carbohydrate, it really puts my blood sugar up. So I'm only buying quality sausages, so sausages can be a junk food because the cheaper ones are not, they have so much bran or carbohydrate put in them and so many inputs, they can be a junk food. But if you source, say, some like the Hex sausages that are 95% meat, they're probably completely fine.
I'm sorry, Nick. I was reading something the other day.
I want your food today to be all sorted by the time we come off this call.
It's fine. Well, with the beans, because you read certain stuff that people like beans as a protein source, and then you read other bits that beans are evil. So there's just this, as you've pointed out, this massive level of confusion depending on who you listen to.
There is, and the confusion suits my enemies very well, because then the public are left thinking it probably doesn't matter because they don't know what they're doing. So, well, I know how to sort the way through this. I've got the way. Liz, pay attention.
Okay.
Right. We were designed, weren't we? Mainly, you are a cave woman, most of you. Is your genetics a cave woman, right? And there were millennia of Liz's living in caves and eating, and your physiology is cave woman. So you have to think, is it likely that beans against that, green beans are sort of deadly? Because probably you were harvesting some green stuff and you were eating meat. And, you know, is it likely that eggs are dangerous? Probably not. I think we should be more suspicious of modern stuff like vegetable oil, perhaps, junk food, and things with loads of ingredients in. And also, if we look at the health, so in every Aboriginal population studied, every single Inuits, Aborigines, all of these, they more or less didn't have cancer or heart disease. So where's all that come from? And it's getting worse and worse. And so basically, eat food you saw advertised ever, so that's pizza and nonsense, buy ingredients and make it into stuff. Heavy on the protein, heavy and also green veg, and you're not far wrong with that. You don't need to be as extreme as me because you probably don't have diabetes.
Well, on the Zoe, this is like a consultation. On the Zoe app, I had one of those, the continuous glucose monitoring.
Yeah, you learn from them.
And the thing that triggered it the most compared to anything else was white rice.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of that was about training to put that, or advice about putting that carb with a high protein source. But it was still the white rice that triggered it more than anything else.
Well, actually, just for your viewers, I've done some work on that. So 150 grams of boiled rice, which is a small bowl, is the same as 10 teaspoons of sugar in terms of your body. So whether you put 10 teaspoons of sugar in a cup of coffee or you ate a small bowl of boiled rice is about the same. So yes, there's a hell of a lot of sugar in rice, and you need to balance it with healthy fats and protein. And rice will make you hungry and fatter. So I don't eat rice. I use cauliflower rice. I haven't eaten rice in 12 years, ever. But I have to be non-compromising because I have diabetes, so I'm going to start losing my vision or something. I don't want to take the drugs. So I have to be clean. And I really value the ability to run and be fit. I really, really value it. But I think most 66-year-olds have to, you need to wake up to care for yourself. So I remember I was telling patients to only eat 2 eggs a week, like it was just as a treat. And then I'd say to patients, this was before 2012, I'd say to patients, right, never have butter, get Flora. Never have cream, never have full fat milk, get the fully skimmed milk, and you're only allowed 2 eggs a week. And then the patients would come back and they'd say, right, Dr. Unwin, I've given up all the foods I love. I can't wait for my blood results. And you know what? They were no better. And that is because there is no link. And this is proven in 2016, the British Heart Foundation acknowledged there is no link between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol. So actually, many of my patients, including me, I might have 3 eggs a day. My cholesterol's fine. There is no link between dietary cholesterol and serum cholesterol. A friend of mine in the States ate 24 eggs per day for 2 weeks and monitored. He's in Harvard. He's a medical student at Harvard University. He ate 24 eggs per day for 2 weeks. And his cholesterol was very slightly better at the end of the 2 weeks than when he began, because there's no link between dietary cholesterol and serum cholesterol. So again, the viewers, there is no evidence about cheese, no evidence about butter, no evidence about eggs. And that's very liberating, I think. And nice for facts.
Visceral reaction against margarine. I just can't even look at it.
And that visceral reaction is a good one. You're right. And very slowly they've gone a bit quiet on margarine. See, they're going, and I understand that butter sales it's rising, and so it should. So it should. It's not likely that butter is killing people, given the history of how long it's been eaten. We should be more suspicious of newer foods, I think.
And diabetes, David, as a percentage of the population of a certain diabetes in relation to, I don't know, people over 50. And many people will have it and not know they've got it.
Oh, loads. Yes, as I say, my practice has had 10-fold increase in the number of people with diabetes. I have a close friend. It's very common in Asian patients. So I have a friend who's a GP just outside London, and 70% of the people who are over 65 in his practice have either diabetes or type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. And then if you add to that, how many of us are metabolically healthy? How many people don't have a big tummy? I told you that 38% of all your friends and all your family right now have fatty liver. If you take your animals to slaughter and they had fatty liver, you'd be a bit worried, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you think that was odd?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about the NHS and all that kind of stuff. So say, for example, the lady who came to you, or a typical person who's going to the doctors, is on 3, 4, 5 drugs for diabetes. Financially, what's that costing a day, roughly? £10, £20?
Well, let me think. So that's 2,000 or 3,000 a year. So that would be every 1,000 a year is £20 a week. So that'd be 3,000. So that's £60 a week on the drugs easily. And if she's on insulin, you're probably adding a few more. So I think we spend nationally about 10 billion a year on diabetes. And we know that if every GP prescribed as I do, the nation would save 270 million a year on the drug diabetes alone. We could be building hospitals on this. But I think really more important for me is the shortening of people's lives. And it isn't just the shortening of life, it's how functional you are. So many older people, rather than being like me, running, they're on sticks and not able to enjoy life, very inflamed. People are getting, the number of people I see on aeroplanes who are so heavy, they have to have assistance. That's all new. That's all new. And I think we're blindfolded, stumbling into a horrible metabolic disaster. And we should be thinking about metabolic health and understanding it, and then individualizing. The Freestyle Libre app that Liz, you were using, it can teach you a great deal. But many older people don't have protein because actually there's a link between life expectancy and muscle strength. And you can't maintain muscle mass if you don't eat enough protein. Loads of people are not having enough protein because of the expense of it. But then again, if you're eating junk food, you can afford, apparently. You've got disposable income. You should junk the junk. And really that farmers ought to get behind that. I suppose farmers are growing some of the ingredients for junk food. I suppose the sugar beet farmers. But really sugar, there is no justification, in my opinion, for sugar as a crop. None. It's an evil, addictive substance, and it's shortening people's lives. And there's subsidies for it, and it destroys the soil. It's evil stuff. Fed to lamb or whatever. Of course, and then we come to how you produce it. That really matters. We're coming to the end now, and I think I'd like to draw it together to say, so for me as a doctor, I'm trying to avoid the anti-drugs. So that's antihypertensive, anti-diabetic drugs, and acids drugs, the anti-inflammatory drugs, antidepressant drugs. Try and avoid those, and I'm trying to find how could nutrition help with some of those. For you, it's the sides you need to watch out for. So the herbicides, the pesticides, the fungicides. And when you think about those two things, both in medicine and in farming, you have problems, but those problems are biological problems. So we keep reaching for chemical solutions to what are biological problems. And that's in medicine, but it's also in farming. And what we need to really focus on is what are the true causes of illness? So I was telling you about the lady at the beginning. Well, she wasn't taking her metformin. But is the cause of diabetes a failure of the metformin gland, so that metformin is the true answer to diabetes? No. The cause of diabetes is your diet, and you sort out the diet and you don't need the metformin. And then, of course, something similar is in regenerative agriculture, where you're thinking about soil health. Well, you don't improve soil health by using fungicides and herbicides. You've got to, you have to think about, and heavens, I don't have any expertise in this, but there are farmers who know a great deal about soil health, and it can lead, as you rightly say, into improving soil health, can lead to biodiversity improvements and nutritional density. How you keep your cattle. So one of the richest sources of vitamin D is outdoor raised pork, for instance. one of the richest sources of vitamin D. So how you keep the animals, how you grow the crops, will impact onto nutritional density, the very thing that is so important. And I would say to housewives, please consider nutritional density when you're feeding your family. And maybe it's worth paying a bit more because the farmers really need. We should be rewarding the expertise that some of you have for producing nutrient-dense quality ingredients. And we must be careful not to lose the expertise because it's in some danger.
Thank you, David. Oh, I'm worried I've got quite a few loaves of bread downstairs.
Oh, give them to your worst enemy straight away. Find somebody you don't love. Give them all your biscuits and junk food.
Oh, I haven't got many biscuits, but...
I was talking to someone at the weekend and they were like, well, they were really interested in ReGen farming and going, what percentage of farmers are regenerative? And I'm like, low percentages. And she was like, but I don't understand why, because like all of the evidence is pointing towards that has these like cascading impacts.
Yes.
So we're really interested in how we get, I suppose part of this conversation is this wider view, isn't it? It's not just, can't just be we're making money off farming, but we're also having consequences, and those consequences are in NHS budgets or company budgets or
yeah. I mean, the perfect answer, and it's been done in Brazil, is thinking about air miles, where the food that should be subsidized is food that's produced locally, and they did that in a Brazilian city where they taxed the junk food. And then they started up farmers' markets and markets and ensured the food was so cheap, and people will start buying food that's cheap. It can be done. And this is exactly why I decided to reach out to farmers, because when you meet people from a different world, you could teach me a great deal about farming and the soil, and it's very interesting to me, but I can teach you a great deal about medicine. And so that's why I specifically think farmers are a very interesting bunch to work with.
Thank you for listening to the ReGen Ag podcast. Huge thanks to our sponsor Tim Nicholson from Cactus Tree Guards, Renault for the music, and Pete Ord, the podcast wizard from the studio at Sunbeams, part of the Annie Mawson Sunbeams Music Trust. See you next time.